Boom.
Dan, how you doing?
Here we are. Just hit that button. Here we are.
Oh,
It happened.
ready to rock. I know it's us. We got the whole audience here. I'm super pumped. I'm loving the shirt. I got to get one of those. I'm gonna
Thank
hit
you.
you.
We'll have one sent. Isn't that
I'm gonna.
nice?
Yeah, it's very nice. I'm gonna hit you up. I'll send you one of our sales nerd hoodies.
That'd be great.
Hey everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm really excited. And thanks for joining us for the supercharged Revenue Excellence Summit here for MSP. I'm super juiced to have the founder and CEO of Clari, Andy Byrne here. A couple people may have heard of Clari, just a bit. I'm super pumped to be talking with super pumped, supercharged to be talking with Andy today, and talking about the where Clary came from, where it's going, kind of how the market is shaping up right now, what Andy's been hearing from board members and operating executives, so on and so forth. So lots of great stuff to cover today. For folks who may not be familiar, my name is Pete Kazanji. I'm one of the founders of Atrium. We make data-driven sales management software that helps sales organizations align their organizations and embed a culture of data-driven sales management. And also one of the founders of Modern Sales Pro. So that's a little bit on me. Andy, why don't you share with folks? Folks are probably familiar with you as the CEO of Clari, but maybe not a little bit about your background. Maybe you could share a little bit about that, and then we'll get into some of the topics we're going to be talking about today.
Sure. First of all, Pete, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Love Atrium and love Modern Sales Pro. Just humbled to be here. A little bit about me. I'll maybe give people a little bit of personal. I've got two boys, 18 and 19.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry, they're 19 and 20 now. Just turned. They're both in college, so Julie and I are empty nesters, which is really fun. We're having a great time. My passion in life is mountain biking, so it's my church is my mountain bike.
Nice.
Although I'm a big fan of skiing and surfing as well, so I try to get into the outdoors, and sometimes drives my wife crazy because I'm always outside. Big
have,
runner.
have you skied and mountain biked in the same day?
Yeah. I have not, but we're talking about. I had a childhood moment when I used to spend a lot of time in Tahoe.
Okay.
And where on July 3rd, I think I was about 8 years old, maybe 9 years old. I skied Alpine Meadows.
Okay.
Snow skied, and then on July 3rd, and then we water skied on the lake.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that's coming. That's going to happen this year.
You can do the trifecta. You can ski, mountain bike, and then water ski and Lake Tahoe, right?
Although I think the mountain biking is going to be on pavement because there's still going to be so much snow on the ground.
Yeah, it's a lot of
stuff. But a little bit about me work-wise. So I've been, and the short version, I've been in and around the revenue process now for 3 decades. Yes, I'm old. I'm in my 50s now. So, and last 10 years, it's been my professional responsibility to help CEOs and CROs and boards answer the most important question in business: will they meet, beat, or miss on revenue? And we've been at Clari now for over a decade, and I'm excited about the next decade. I think it's going to be more impactful than the last 10 years of work. So excited about the road ahead, and thanks for having us.
Yeah, for sure. I think what might be helpful for folks is because I think if I recall correctly, you've had revenue leadership roles before you were the founder of Clari, and that's not the most common background for software founders. I think it's becoming more, right? And I think actually we've had some panel talks on so you want to start a company because apparently you hate fun and you want to eat glass all day long, but it's okay. Let's put that over here. But but I think it kind of gives you a unique perspective as somebody who is very intimate with the challenges of being a revenue leader. Maybe you could share with folks a little bit what inspired the foundation of Clari, and kind of what the first couple years of Clari looked like before you guys became this household name associated with revenue operations and forecasting and running revenue.
Yeah. So what I'd say, first of all, I just want to say my first job at a school, SDR.
Yeah.
So I want to just shout out to my SDR brethren. So yes, the path to CEO,
punch to the face, 8 to 6.
Path to CEO is possible. Keep dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
I fell in love with software engineers. So I was at a small networking startup called Milan Technologies, and
Okay.
the Cubes now, it's a small startup at the time, and I was outbound calling for the products we were selling, and the engineers were right next to me, and I remember this engineer had a motherboard and the soldering iron smokes coming off of it, and there's these ones and zeros and all this stuff on the screen, and I was just so curious, like, what is that? What are you doing? And anyway, because of I was so curious about how the software was built, um, and I would take the engineers out to lunch, and we had formed relationships that I was really, really good at selling the products
Yeah.
because of my curiosity. And fast forward to my entrepreneurship. I've it's the fourth company I've been involved starting. I've done it twice myself as founder CEO. Um, I love creating something from nothing, and in this case, what I was curious about
Hmm.
um, was how painful it was to in and when you started thinking about Clary was running sales was so hard.
Yeah.
And we looked at the silos between marketing, sales, the silo between pre-sales and post-sales, and we just thought, wow, we're in the CRM, doesn't do exactly what we wanted to do. So a lot of people there's a lot of exports that are happening into Excel spreadsheets.
Right.
And we call that Excel hell, right? From the rep all the way up to the boardroom. And then
Right.
people would now break Excel because you couldn't aggregate large volumes of data. So they'd export into a BI tool.
Right.
And the industry calls it the three-headed hydra. It's painful. And so I experienced this, firsthand. And so I took my thesis I took to Sequoia Capital along with my co-founder and CTO, Venkat Rangan, was that, hey, there's never been a system that's been built from the ground up to help companies run revenue.
Right.
The metaphor is, hey, the R in CRM is not revenue, the R in ERP is not revenue, and let's go build something from the ground up that could transform those workflows. And I think what we saw that others did not see, because everyone says, "Hey, what did the entrepreneurs see that others did not?" It's true, actually, that it's sounds like a cliche, but it's not. I think what we saw was that there was this 13-week cadence that a CRO was running,
Right.
right? Every hour of every day of every week of every month of the quarter, they were doing things across the three-headed hydra and bouncing all over the place. So we looked at that workflow intimately, and we started to build a new experience for a rep to help them close their deals faster. We built a new experience for a manager to eliminate blind spots that allowed them to drive more revenue. And then we built an experience for an executive to help them produce increase the accuracy or predictability of the forecast. Rep, manager, exec. We
Right.
called it the golden triangle at the time. So we said, hey, we don't know what the hell we're going to call this product. Let's just go build for those three people, and maybe we'll have something special. And from there, it kind of took off.
That's actually a good question. Who came up with the name Clary?
It was my co-founder and head of product. He used it was Clarius,
Oh,
and then
it's very
we
clear,
yeah,
kind
it's
of
like God
muddy.
is
We're
Clary
not
or
so
something like that.
sure how are we
Deity.
gonna how are we gonna vote Clarius, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
and
got
then
it.
in the funny story, I typed in, it's like we're scrapping together PowerPoint slides to do this presentation. And in the early days, you're changing the presentation like every
Sure.
meeting because you're learning something new every meeting.
Right.
I decided to build this little cloud service, and I decided to call it Clary instead of Clarius because we were called Clarius Systems.
Yeah.
Total like throwback to the '90s, right?
Right. Right.
And then I typed in www.clary.com, and it said, page not found. I went, oh my God, like no one
Ooh.
has this. So we scrambled, we got the URL, we got the
Oh
trademark
wow.
stuff. And so, yeah, it kind of took off from there.
There you go. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that you described the like three-headed hydra. I remember when I was doing the our early customer research for Atrium back in like 2016, probably did about 150 customer interviews. I remember talking with somebody about like that operating rhythm and essentially like the forecasting process. And literally they were talking about how it was like a week-long process to get the information for like the Monday forecast call started last Monday.
Yep.
And essentially what it was just like, I mean, what's the joke? Like a series of tubes, right? The internet is a series of tubes. In this case, it was like just like a series of like Excel documents that were being forwarded along,
Yeah.
right? Because like, the individuals would like update their, they would like score all their deals, and it would go to the RSM, and the RSM would then, like, all the RSMs would do it, and then they like Tuesday's RSM day, and like, Wednesday's RVP day, and like Thursday's like,
Yeah. I know.
AVP day, and then finally it shows up, and then like now we have an answer, right? Of like in the like the number of like forwards that are happening there, and of course like all the brain damage associated with it
You
is
know what
positively barbaric.
what's interesting about that commentary, and other than giving me chills because it reminds me of the good old days where it was so painful. I mean, I'll just digress for a minute. When I found out about that the three-headed hydra was not just my experience, it was
Right.
every company's experience, both private companies and public companies, I thought, this is not cool. Like, this is not the way you should run the most important revenue process. Now, your commentary that I think is really interesting for the audience is what everyone now is starting to talk about, which is time to revenue.
Hmm.
What is time to revenue? It's the amount of time it takes a company to get results from their revenue process.
Hmm.
How long does it take a rep to manage that deal, to get the data in? How long does it take a manager to look at where they have risk, or look at where they have, how long does it take to roll up things, right? This, and it takes so long. And as a result, things get lost. Things start to leak. Revenue starts to leak across the system because our time to revenue is horrible.
Right.
So that's a big thing that people are talking about. How do we reduce the time to revenue? How do we reduce our revenue leak so we can get to a place where we are as efficient as possible, we are as productive as possible, and we're achieving what the industry calls total revenue precision, which we can talk about. You
Yeah.
know, uh,
Yeah, I think it's like all the, so our audience, of course, is sales operations folks and sales leaders here, and I think everyone is very intimate with the concept of like time kills all deals, right? But I think you could actually like expand that out and say like, well, it's actually just like time, like like lags in the process, right? Like time offset,
yep,
like negatively impacts any process, right? Like, yes, time kills all deals because like your champion ends up
totally.
like moving to a different company, or like something changes or what have you. But that applies like that can apply to a customer success situation, that can
Yep,
apply to an SDR situation as well. So having tighter linkages from a from almost like a factory, like an assembly line standpoint, makes things way more way more precise and way more effective. um so one thing I know that so one thing that gosh, I forget who it was. I saw a really thoughtful LinkedIn post the other day. I guess that's maybe a little bit of an oxymoron, but hey, I'm going with it. The
nice.
That was talking about how, like, I mean, I think everyone would, you'd be hard pressed to deny the fact that um, Clary has really a lot of mind share in the boardroom,
Yep.
at the CRO level, at the e-staff level, et
Mhm.
cetera. Because like ultimately, like the number, right, is this thing that is like the signifier that we're driving. Like all these efforts go into this thing right here that tells us if we're creating economic value, right?
Yep.
And so obviously you talk with a lot of board members, a lot of investors, a lot of like e-staff folks. What are like what's super top of mind for them these days as relates to running revenue and what have you?
Yeah, what I'd say is that the the topics are, there's a lot of conversation around revenue leak,
Mm.
um, and where is revenue leaking. And in this environment, people are not just thinking about cost cutting; they're thinking about, hey, every drop of revenue matters. So there's, hey, we want, because boards want to look at, hey, let's do a revenue leak assessment. We do a lot of work with private equity firms. They bring us into a lot of deals that they do. They acquire a company, or a VC firm is going to, do an investment into a
Hmm.
young company, and they deploy Clari, and we can immediately see where they're leaking revenue.
Hmm.
And that's just really important for the board to get a baseline. So there's that's happening quite a bit. I would say that the other big thing that we're discussing now that's more, I think, becoming more of a critical sort of hot topic is revenue governance. Now, people used to think about governance as like a word where, it sounds old school and it sounds hard and laborious. And but if you look at, recent um, things that are going on that they're totally outside of our industry, whether it's, FTX or crypto or Silicon Valley Bank, or, governance is going to be is an important thing in business that I think is going to get a lot more coverage and a lot more think time at the board level. Do we have governance across all of our systems? And the fact is, how are we deploying? Do we have a revenue governance strategy? And what is that? Revenue governance is the ability for the company to run the revenue process in a consistent, repeatable, consistent manner, such
Hmm.
that they can have revenue precision and not be surprised by what's coming out of the revenue end-to-end process. It happens to me the most important business process that the board cares about, frankly, other
Hmm.
than building out the products. So that. I think revenue governance is something that people will hear not just on the Modern Sales Pros podcast, but you'll be hearing it all over the place.
Got it. And I think so. Obviously, like end of last year, like mid last year, end of last year, a lot of economic resetting and what have you. A lot of pipeline got flushed.
Yep.
A lot of and so now I think one of the things that we're hearing from our customers is one of the things that I like. I kind of think about when you think about like what pipeline represents, right? Pipeline's like it's future revenue if it doesn't leak, right? So and but if you think about like where pipeline comes from, it comes from like a set of conditions in the world, right? Like somebody, like an individual had an expectation that like they potentially could engage in a speculative purchasing process or purchasing evaluation or what have you. And then when information shifts, like new information shows up. It's like, the CFO told everybody like we're not allowed to purchase anything or what have you.
Yeah.
So then like that pipeline that had represented potential transactions, like the information changed. And
Yeah.
so now, unfortunately, like that old stuff is like maybe not actually real anymore. And so now you have to you have to rebuild it. And so I wonder to what extent you're like now that we're, a couple quarters, like 2-3 quarters into this reset, kind of like what you're hearing from your customers as relates to kind of like rebuilding that future pipeline.
Yeah, I'll start at a macro level, and then I'll bring it down into customer examples. But
Mhm.
right now we've got roughly just over $1 trillion being managed through our system right now, which is great. So it gives us a really interesting view across lots of data, 1,000 customers, lots of pipeline. The macro view is that it's mixed. We have some
Yeah.
companies that are definitely hemorrhaging, and it's tough days. And that's a large. There's a large portion of companies that are that way. And they're good companies. They build great products, and for one reason or another, they're starting to see pipeline erosion. They're starting to see sales cycles are increasing. We do see companies that are in different industries that are actually accelerating through this.
Hmm.
Now, part of that is, what market are they in? Security is a great example where we have a lot of the,
Hmm.
most of the top security companies are Clary customers, and we see in that market it's still taken off in a pretty significant way because security is a big deal. Um, so I think that also see other companies across other sectors in healthcare, life sciences, in business services, in manufacturing, actually doing better. Not in terms of the results that they're producing necessarily, but in terms of increased pipeline. And I'll say there is there does seem like there's a trend right now
Mhm.
to pipeline becoming stronger.
Mhm.
Most recently that we're seeing that is across the cohort, the entire cohort, which is encouraging, but it's a small, duration
Yeah.
of data, so we have to be patient to suggest that things are changing.
Yeah.
Um, but in terms of the actual what do people do about that? Um, I would say, for the audience to consider, I think the biggest move that CEOs and young operators can make is to be super honest with their boards and super direct and proactively communicate what they're seeing. And a lot of the Clary customers, they give their boards access to Clary, so they all know what's going on. So there's no, hey, let's update the board 90 days from now with a PDF. Like, the boards are in the data, they get it, and they're actually helping. um, so total transparency, proactive communication, and then getting alignment with the board that, hey, we're going to be malleable in terms of our operating plan. We're going to set a goal, but we all have to align that and not be surprised that the goal is going to change potentially
Right.
every 90 days. And so you got to be flexible, and then you have to be conservative on spend, right? And so that's what people are doing in terms of the actual things that they're doing to change the trajectory of their pipeline. I mean, I could talk for 5 hours about that, Pete.
A
E
variety of tactics.
and each company is different, right? They're selling different products to different segments, right? To different geos, and it really is a case by case. There's no prescriptive formula that someone's gonna take away from an Andy Byrne narrative that's gonna get them to say, "I'm gonna go try
Come
that."
on, man. We want I think everybody wants they want the silver bullet. No, just kidding. Um,
No silver bullets.
yeah, unfortunately, right? Yeah, just a lot of bronze ones. Gotta chop a lot of wood, carry a lot of water. Well, changing gears a little bit. I mean, I know that I think like 40% of MSP's audience is revenue operations folks. The rest being sales and sales development leadership. Um, I think this notion of the revenue process, as Claire likes to describe it, as being like a pan-departmental process that cuts across a bunch of different functions. Obviously needs someone to like tend to it, to like feed and water it. And so historically, obviously, like sales operations was kind of stovepiped over here in sales, and then of course the realization is like, well, you know what, like having the same people who are attending to the marketing automation platform and all the
Yep.
information associated with that, and then of course downstream in customer success land, especially when you think about like SaaS not being a one and done sort of thing, but instead it's all about the renewal, it's all like about the expansion, all those sort of things. So having someone who like thinks about the entire process and make sure that it's optimized and kind of fixes bugs and identify things. This is something that you guys have worked really heavily on. Is part like tying in with the revenue operations community. Maybe you can kind of, and I think there's actually there's some kind of like information that's coming out around how that's really impacted the size of that job market.
Yep.
I think there was like a report on that recently.
Yeah, there was a CNBC jobs report dropped. They have an annual report that drops
Mhm.
in the month of February that described the 10 fastest growing jobs in the United States, and the fastest growing job in America is revenue operations, which is amazing. And so anyone who is part of this movement, I think it's just the beginning. The fact that it is the fastest growing job says a lot. What I would say is that there is a lot of momentum around, hey, how do we run revenue to be more efficient, more predictable, more connected? Um, the If I think about, well, where is this headed? Um, what we did is we announced what's called, it's a landing place for folks called runrevenue.pro, which is
Mhm.
off the back of the what happened with the jobs report of, hey, it's one place where revenue professionals can go to learn about all the Clary certification stuff, all of the revenue
Mhm.
cadences that we're running across the companies now that we have 1,000 customers that all have different types of 13-week cadences that they run. So we're starting to publish this data, which is going to be very rich data that people can use across the community. What I'd say if I was to go to think about arming the revenue operations professionals that are listening to this is uh, the way we think about it, and I think the market will start to change their thought process. Is you have a CRM database, Pete, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Yep. You have an ERP database, you have a customer success database, but you don't have a revenue database that contains an aggregation of all of the data, all of the revenue data that can impact the company's ability to drive more efficiency, growth, and predictability. So we call it a RevDB.
Mhm.
Um, and that's purpose-built database that's inside the enterprise that we are placing inside there, and we're then building new workflows on top of that.
Mhm.
And there's a reason why, in some cases, up to 50% of an employee base are revenue critical employees, right? They're not just in
Is that right?
sales, they're in marketing and pre-sales, they're in finance and post-sales. We have companies where in the healthcare life sciences where their supply chain people are in Clary, right?
Huh.
Their product managers are in Clary. Well, why do they need to be in Clary? Well, supply chain needs to know the
Mhm.
demand forecast because they're downstream.
Right.
Product managers, they're graduating from just being product people to being general managers. I call it PM to GM, and
Mhm.
they want to be accountable for their product line revenue, right? So, but there's no system. Go back to the three-headed hydra. They're all over the place. So now they're able to. So the RevOps um, person, community, profession is about how can they shepherd, steward total revenue collaboration in one system that's got that's on top of a revenue database, and then how can they provide revenue governance, right, and make sure that when they're running this process, every single meeting of every hour of every day of every week of every month of the quarter, just want to call that out, um, is done and run to perfection. Then when we're calling numbers, when we're asking trying to answer the most important question in business, will you meet, beat, or miss? There's a lot of confidence on that,
Right.
and the time, going back to time to revenue, the time it took for them to get those predictions across every segment, geo, product line, down to the rep, down to your deal commentary about is that deal gonna slip or is it really going to close? Once you do that, you actually have the ability to transform the company. And imagine if you can drive 1 to 2% increase in conversion, it
Mhm.
has a profound impact. And what those revenue operations professionals need to think about is what's the revenue collaboration and governance strategy. It's a
Mhm.
very different um, thought process, right? Than saying, "Hey, let's go figure out our pipeline. Hey, let's go figure out,
Right.
what's happening with between S0 and S2, and let's go figure out why is marketing." I mean, if you rise up and you take to your and this has nothing to do with Clary, by the way, right? This has everything to do with being a strategic thought partner for your CRO and for your executive management team on go think about revenue collaboration. Are you nailing it? Yes or no?
Mhm.
Go think about revenue governance. Think about your 13-week cadence and just drive more rigor and drive more diligence that's going to allow you to achieve a more consistent, predictable outcome. If they do that, it has nothing to do with software and RevDB and what everyone else says that, but has everything to do with being a steward of running revenue. then watch what happens to their careers. And watch what happens to the impact that they will have in their companies. It's a very strategic frame, and anyone on this that's listening to this, just take it for a test drive. Just go into your CROs and talk about it, and hit me on LinkedIn and tell me how it went.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that historically, um, we were talking about that kind of like forwarding Excel documents around and what have you, and like that's like a kind of a single use case, which is this notion of like forecasting, like, hey,
Mhm.
let's roll up the number, what have you. But I think the realization is that there's a variety of use cases that kind of extend beyond that, that goes across, as you were kind of noting earlier, across different functions and what have you. And this
Yep.
is something that I think that Clary's been doing a lot of work on, especially like expanding out the offering. I know that you guys acquired a company called the call recording company. It's like
Wingman.
Wingman. Thank you. Um, and have been doing other things to kind of like add, like, to fill in different functionalities that facilitate that running of revenue. Um, Obviously, a more complete solution is useful to customers in that regard. Maybe you can kind of comment a little bit of like how like the kind of core forecasting piece of what Clary has been known for historically has been being added to there, and some of the other things that I think you guys have announced recently.
Yeah, so a handful of things that I'll start off with. If I go back to the early commentary that I mentioned in this call, is that we started our ethos is we started with the rep, and the helping them with a new interface. Then we went manager, then we went exec. So we kind of came from the rep point of view, and we
Mhm.
started to go and what we can call these internal workflows, right, of how you run revenue. And of course, we tied into looking at the human behavior of how did people behave inside the CRM database. We tied into email, we tied into calendar, Gmail and Exchange, started analyzing all of that. And yes, we realized that conversational intelligence is more signal that we need to pull in. And
Mhm.
we started pulling in that signal as well. What we realized is our team kind of fell in love with Wingman. Not kind of. We fell in love with it. We had the some of the industry leader CI technology internally. We were customers of theirs, and we started using Wingman. And I had all three CI solutions on my screens, and Wingman just kind of blew me away, Pete. So we started the courtship, and we loved their business model. We loved their team. They're just scrappy entrepreneurs who are now scaling. They're still at the company, and they've taken on bigger roles, which is fun. Now, how we've integrated that CI is really powerful, is how you can pull that into the workflow. And it's not just the forecasting, it's you're doing a one-on-one, you're doing pipeline inspection, you're doing
Right.
pipe creation, you're doing a slip deal review, you're doing a white space analysis for your upsell cross sell. So these are all motions, revenue moments that are being run in Clary, right? We are extending CI into that, and then we acquired a company called Deal Point out of Portland, great small company that we is doing mutual action plans, and that's been really powerful small
Mhm.
acquisition that we did that's just deploying across nearly every single one of our customers. So that's been great, and there's more on the way. And customers want to expand the value footprint. They're asking us to do more. There's really interesting, potential companies out there over time
Mhm.
that we're excited about. We've raised a lot of capital, which is great. And we're starting to get, we've got two nice at bats, and we've exceeded board plans on both of them. But there's a lot more to do, and I think from the customer's perspective, they want to reduce spend, they want to reduce tech stack complexity, and I think you'll see more of that and more competes happening. I think the customer's going to win, which is great.
Yeah. Well, and so those are two kind of like quote unquote inorganic, additions to the portfolio. But I think you guys have been announcing um, some kind of generative AI uh, innovations and enhancements recently as well. Maybe you can kind of talk a little bit about those.
Yeah, so we announced Rev GPT, which is our latest entry into the market using generative AI. It's not a marketing splash. It's actually working in production in our customer accounts, and I'm blown away by it.
Not
So
it's not jazz hands. It's real.
I got to tell you, there's this huge debate internally. We were supposed to announce it so much earlier,
Hmm.
and I said no. And we waited because I wanted it in production. I wanted customers excited about it. I wanted to see it, and now we have it turned on at scale, and it's called Smart Summaries. And you can imagine the transcripts that you get from CI; they're great, and you can search, and you got snippets and all that good stuff. But it's amazing to see this. What is a 7-page transcript or a 20-page transcript summarized into 3 bullets of, hey, here's what happened and here's the proposed next steps with the actual owners. It's scary how accurate it is.
Mhm.
And it's not always perfect all the time, but in terms of that frontline manager that's trying to figure out, hey, where do I have risk? That rep saying, hey, I need to get back to the customer. Generative AI is going to solve for time to revenue. It's going to shrink the amount of time it takes for us to get the insight and then to take action on the inside fast. And I think you're going to see a massive productivity shift
Mhm.
across all revenue teams as a result. And that's just a small thing that we announced, and there's more coming.
Nice. Any kind of like hints and previews you can mention regarding the kind of the other things that you guys are thinking about as relates to AI hitting the Clary product?
No, just
No.
kidding. Uh,
Right.
uh, no, I have to be careful because my product team or my
We don't want
marketing
you to. We don't want it. We don't want you to get in trouble.
they get all pissed off at me. Andy, stop being, don't get so too excited. But what I'd say is that, um, if you just look at um, the cast that's
Mhm.
in the revenue process and the people that are involved, and you just look at their workflows and their
Sure.
day, and you study it intimately. And we've got all this data that we've had been collecting on now for a decade across the behavior of humans. There's a lot of really interesting um, actions and insights that will provide that I think will, if I was to summarize, the way I think about it is, I hired a chief of staff
Mhm.
a couple years ago,
Mhm.
um, and he jumped on board and he just transformed my e-staff, transformed the way we think about running the company, and he was just the second brain for me,
Mhm.
and I was so much better as a result. And I feel like that's what AI will do. You'll have a chief of staff for every single person that is in the process, and everyone's going to be more productive. And then the time it takes to get results from your revenue process is going to shrink dramatically. So I think it's going to be a fun 2 to 5 years, right? And the next half decade, Pete, is going to blow us away.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of like moves happening in our industry in the sales tech world. Um, like not just through things like AI impacting the how people go about doing their day to day. What and like when you think about like what the next couple of years potentially portends for the sales technology kind of market. What sort of trends do you think your folks are going to continue to see? Um, like you're going to see more consolidation of tool chain. We're going to see tool chain extending out to other parts of the
Mm.
revenue process. Like what are your kind of thoughts there?
Well, I'll do a little shout out to Dan Gottlieb and the Gartner team about Sales Tech Mayhem. I think it's great. I love the way they position everything. I think that's fabulous. I do think that there is a desire for customers to want to um, they want to streamline the way they're running revenue. They don't want it all in disparate systems, right? They've got data all over the place, and I think what you're seeing is a race to try to consolidate all of the data into one central database, and then building workflows on top of that database. If I can abstract a little bit, is that what does the customer lack? They lack a centralized location that's normalized all of this different data that's in different languages, from CRM to email metadata to Snowflake data to Postgres to ERP, all of this now into one thing. And then to not just do time series snapshotting historical training set to predict the future, but to also be able to correlate between the different layers of data that's coming through, whether it's Gainsight, of which we've got a partnership, or a
Mhm.
Catalyst, or a Pendo, or a WalkMe kind of information that you're trying to get. So that's the a big trend I'm seeing internally in the IT infrastructure. We're having a lot more conversations with CIOs and IT around that.
Hmm.
And then the second thing I'd say is a trend to giving the customer the ability to bespoke build and transform their own workflows. Right? Don't do it in a packaged app where you look at a Clari and you go, okay, why can't I change that and move it over here? And because my
Right.
and giving them, we call Clary Studio. We need to give
Mhm.
them keys where they can go bespoke, gobble up their three-headed hydra, that CRM pages that don't work, the Excel spreadsheets that they're just so tired of. And I think you'll see a trend to that too, where they're actually doing their own transformation of each workflow or revenue moment. So I think those are the big trends we'll see over time.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, I think you're seeing a lot more partnerships as well. Like you certainly see, people kind of like stepping on each other's toes from a competition standpoint. I think you guys had a pretty uh, pretty substantial partnership announcement recently. With was it with Groove? I want to say, or my when
Yes.
was that?
So
Few-
2
quarter
things
ago,
two
two
things
quarters.
that we announced. Yeah, we announced a, integration partners,
Yep.
of which Groove is a part of that.
Got it.
Gainsight, Crossbeam, um, a handful of others that are, now, partners in our integration hub.
Right, like getting the data into Clari.
Getting the data into RevDB, and Groove is a part of that. We do have a formal go to market with Groove that's fun, that we're going to market together, and we're doing some joint marketing. We're helping each other sell, which is great.
Yeah,
It's
we
fun.
had Chris was on, had a fireside chat with him, the last Revenue Excellence Summit, and so I think that might have been the announcement might have come after that, or maybe it was around the same time. It all blurs together with me. I don't have a 20-year-old and a 19-year-old. I have a 5-year-old, and he likes to wake up at 5 a.m. It all
Well,
kind of blends together, unfortunately.
that's
Um,
a great stage though. 5-year-old is great, man. So
yeah, it's
great stage
fantastic.
of
Yes, I know all the Pokemon. So Andy, I mean, I think in kind of wrapping, any kind of like parting thoughts that you'd like to share with the community. I mean, you have like the attention of 35,000 sales operations and sales leaders. So, what would you like to say?
I mean, I actually don't have anything sort of that's very insightful, other than you have the what I think is the most important job in the world,
Mhm.
and that's not bullshit. Sorry if you have to bleep that out, but
It's real.
uh, look, no one can debate that revenue is the most important business process in the company, right? And if you can reimagine and rethink the way you want to drive change in your organizations. If you think about we call it Rev CG, revenue collaboration and governance, right? It's not just revenue ops, right?
Mhm.
Rev ops is seemingly a support function. Revenue collaboration and governance is a way to take a strategic conversation to your CRO, to your CFO, to your executive management team, and say, "How are we doing on this?" And I think
Yep.
you'll drive some and stimulate very important, spicy debates that need to happen.
Mhm.
Um, and just start with saying, do we have a revenue blueprint? Yes or no? Just take that for a test drive. And if you don't, come see us. We can help you map that whole thing out.
I like it.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Andy, thank you very much for taking the time and
Thank you, Pete.
sharing your perspective with our audience. Audience, obviously, please stick around. There's more sessions today, and go ahead and hit Andy up on LinkedIn. He's he's pretty easy to find on there. Just get it. Search for the CEO of Clari. Andy, thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day. Okay.
Thanks for the time, Pete. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Take care.
Thanks.